pretty close to equilibrium here. We actually use our homebrew software on the big system as well. So we have this software that's for homebrewing, and we design an equipment profile, it's called.
For nearly a decade, the Cowtown Yeast Wranglers have gathered together once a month in the back room of the Wild Rose Brewery to share a passion that each and every member has, appreciating the craft of good beer. It is in this setting both men and women, young and old, experienced and beginners, exchange tales of their latest brews. With diversity greater than the range of beers offered at your local pub, this is Calgary's true beer community.
If you want some bratwurst and some sauerkraut to match with it, you can go grab a piece back there. It's my religion and it's my gospel, and I love to share it just like one of those born-again Christian guys.
I was brewing really before there was supply shops or anything around.
When I moved here, my friends, for a birthday present, they heard me talk about it before, so they bought me the equipment, so you know, then they could reap the benefits as well.
The whole idea is doing something that's of your own manufacture.
Calgary has this, warm, welcoming, environment, so it was easy for me to get involved.
When I talk to my friends, a lot of them are they enjoy drinking my beer, but they don't really understand the passions that I might have towards the hobby.
The first meeting that I came to, I met someone who offered to show me, how he did it the first time.
I wouldn't have branched out making different styles of beer if it wasn't coming to this meeting, yeah.
One member rising out of this community to bring his own brand of homebrew to Calgary is Graham Sherman.
Jeff and I became good buddies because we totally bonded over just taking our hobbies way too far. Beer was kind of a natural progression. We went from coffee to home automation, barbecue, everything we did. Like my barbecue tweets me when my ribs are ready, right? So that kind of geekiness in hobbies it makes it a lot of fun. So beer was quite literally the next logical step, and it's the one that we just said, whoa, what the heck is going on here? This is the greatest hobby on earth. A big production facility, almost every brewery out there has a filter. I hate filters because they pull all the goodness out of beer. When you get into brewing, you can make kits, and that's fine. There's that type of home brewing, and it's nice and easy. But if you take hobbies too far and you want to see what you're capable of doing home brewing, then next thing you know, you have a lab, and you want to make sure everything's repeatable, and you want to make sure everything's PID temperature controlled, and it's, there's no plastic, it's all stainless, and it just keeps, there's no end to it, right? Clearly. So yeah, that was, it really did fit well with the type of geeks that we are. This is the perfect hobby for it, yeah. Okay, in she goes. Stirring. The very first batch we brewed, at the time we were drinking a lot of New Belgium. I love New Belgium beers, and so we came up with a clone recipe online. It was just a fat tire clone recipe, and we said, perfect, that's the one, that's what we'll do. So we went and looked at the homebrew store for all the ingredients, and of course they didn't have anything in stock of what we needed, so we were like, okay, well, we'll substitute this grain for this grain, and oh, you don't have that yeast, well, let's try this yeast, so there was a lot of substitutions just so we could kind of brew something. And then, of course, the learning profile or the learning curve was so ridiculous. We didn't know that you couldn't just dump all the hops in the boil kettle at one time. So there's this huge green volcano, spewing all over my deck, and all this madness.
Yeah, this video is for Jeff. Sorry you weren't here, Jeff.
Is this loud?
Yeah.
Should I move the phone?
I don't think it's loud. Whoa, it's carbonated.
Yeah, it is.
Nice. I'm like, I hope it's carbonated.
Ooh, it's brown.
Inaugural tool shed brewing.
So how are you feeling about this? This is a big deal. This is the first one.
Check it out. It's not really an amber, is it? It's a proper beer.
It's proper.
the beer that came out was so freaking good. That beer like almost single-handedly solidified that we had found, you know, our dream hobby, but also it was so much better than Fat Tire, and we were thinking like, this is glorious beer.
It's full. Suddenly beer making kits went from down here to right up here as good as you could get. That opened up a lot of different styles for people that were only used to our normal sort of fizzy yellow waters that we used to call beer, and getting taste and getting hops and flavor into beer. And then it just seems to have become the in thing. Everybody wants to brew and everybody wants to do it. What I've seen even in my 5-6 years here is when I started, it was a kit-based business. Everybody wants to do kits to start, but then they want to learn how to make it from scratch.
You know, my wife wouldn't let us do it in the kitchen, right? Because we had piano benches and everything set up for gravity-fed systems, and so we had everything in my backyard tool shed. That was just kind of where we were relegated by my wife to do this, right? So almost every day after work, you know, I think one day Jeff said to me, he's like, "Okay, what time are you off work?" I'm like, 5. He's like, "Okay, cool. I'll meet you at 6 o'clock in Tool Shed Brewery." And both of us were like, "Whoa." That's it. So yeah, literally every night after work we were in there brewing something up. It doesn't take long for you to realize that, you know, you're creating this incredible living beverage that everybody around us is so positively affected by. It was such a shock to know that, you know, I make literally some of the greatest coffee in my kitchen, and people come and they go, "Wow, that's great coffee," right? But they come and they have beer and they're like, "Oh my God," right? And people lose their minds about how good beer is, right? It's just a totally different thing.
Beer is community, and you get a group of people together, you want to have a beer because it's good and easy and you share, and it's that social lubricant. So those big caged ones for $40 is no different than thinking about it as a good, well-aged $40 bottle of wine. It's something you don't want to hoard to yourself. It's a beautiful thing, and you want to introduce people to it and share it.
All right. It's pretty dark in here. We sat in the tool shed one night, and we said, okay, it's almost like the decision you make when you're going to get married. You're like, okay, am I going to do this? Am I going to ask this person to marry me? Like, this is for life, right? And we sat in the tool shed one day and we were like, if we do this, there's nothing ever that can stop us. We have to be committed to going, like, crashing through every brick wall, because there will be several, and there have been way more than we even thought. But we have to be like Juggernaut from X-Men, just crashing through every single wall that gets in our way. And so we honestly, it was one of those moments. We looked at each other and we just said, yeah, we're going for it. So quit your job and off you go. It's pretty hardcore, man.
Because there was a minimum volume requirement, Tool Shed couldn't brew in Alberta.
It was a horrible situation. So we found a way around it. What we did was we went looking for a place that wasn't brewing like around the clock. And we said, okay, can we borrow your brewery? Like on the weekend when you're not brewing, we'll come in and we'll make our beer. We have our own recipes. We bought our own canning line. We had things that we can get our own ingredients and everything. You won't even know we exist, right? And the unfortunate thing was everybody in Alberta was basically at capacity or just didn't have the time or the ability to help out. So we found one place in Langley, BC that said, yeah, you can come and use our facility. So what we ended up doing was setting up a license with the AGLC to be importers of beer. So that was a license we could get without any kind of minimums. So we became importers. And the only beer we decided to import was a particular beer made at Dead Frog Brewery in Langley, which was Tool Shed Brewing Company's beers. Yeah, it's pretty cool when you go. I woke up one morning and it was actually one of our Twitter followers that tweeted me in the morning and said, "Wow, great news, no minimums." And my response was just source, right? Like, I'm not getting excited until I actually see this. And when we saw that they had abolished those minimums, I called Jeff, we got in our car and drove straight up to St. Albert to meet the AGLC, to hug them, and to just go nuts, thanking them for this change, because now we can build our brewery. The AGLC is allowing us to come home.
Now that the AGLC has gotten rid of the minimums, the keg has been tapped for the other craft brewers to live their dreams, and no one is complaining about having too much good beer in the market.
Yep. 168, we're good. Maybe one. Nobody ever complains about having too much selection for wine. You see new wines all the time. These reps are bringing in stuff all the time, and I don't think I've ever met a wine person who said, you know what, there's now too many Pinot Noirs to choose from. In the same sense, I don't think this growing beer community, we're ever going to get to the point where someone goes, there's too many IPAs. You know, I'm sick of all these stouts that we have. Why can't we just have 2, 3 to choose from? You know, I only see it growing.
When you start homebrewing, you hear tale of the Sabco, and you go, oh, one day, right? You always think, maybe one day. When I tell people that we started this thing in my backyard tool shed, they go, what? They can't believe it. But the beer geeks out there, all the other homebrewers, and the guys that are really engaged with breweries, they're on Twitter or they're on Tap, those guys know the story, and it was humbling for us to see how many people in that arena kind of lifted us up on their shoulders and said, this is what we support because this is our dream. And this is kind of, you know, this is the dream of homebrewers, to be able to translate what you do in your tool shed to a career. And I remember early days going, we can't fail, we can't stop. Like people are depending on us to get this done. We are like inspiring other people's dreams to do this as well. We have to get this done, and it's an inspirational thing, right? So you wake up in the morning with a real urgency to push forward, right? So that being said, it's terrifying because everything in our lives is on the line. Yeah, I never played poker, but I know what all in means now.
I mean, it's just amazing. Those guys have so much passion, and they took their dream and are just making it a reality. They've put every ounce of blood, sweat, and tears into that brewery, and it's so exciting to see them brewing now and brewing back in Alberta, and they can kind of bring their brand home.
I just saw his passion immediately, and I just saw what they were trying to do, and I just envisioned like where they would be in 5 years. You know, who knew that a year later they'd be where they're at.
Other craft breweries in town are not the competition. We kind of collectively compete with macro beer because we want to teach, you know, the average beer drinker why you shouldn't be drinking, you know, the macro beer. There's so much out there with so much flavor, and don't get stuck in that trap of just saying, oh yeah, I'll have a Bud or I'll have, you know, whatever it is because that's your brand, right? There's so much out there. Paul Gautreaux at Big Rock said it best. He said, it's like we all work for the same company. And I've been in situations where they've said, oh, we'll take that, we'll give you that Big Rock tap. I'm like, don't give me that tap. I'm like, give me that tap, right? Like, don't take the local craft beer off, right? And people are sometimes surprised to hear that because in the beer world, of course, you're fighting for taps, right? But in the craft beer world, there's almost, and I think it's an unspoken code because I don't ever say, I'll never take your tap, man. But when you're sitting there talking to that guy and he's like, I'll give you this tap, I will actually say to him, nah, that's a good tap. Give me that one, right? Some of the people in the Yeast Wranglers and the Homebrewers Guild up in Edmonton, there's a bunch of groups of super high-end beer geeks. These are our people. These are homebrewers, right? But we actually get intimidated when we go to those meetings because a good majority of the people in those groups brew better beer than Jeff and I do, right? I mean, these are guys who obsess all day and all night about what they're brewing. Like if every brewery could have guys like that working there, I mean, I can't even imagine the kind of beers that would be in the world. I don't think enough people give credit to how good the beers are. If you went to a home brewing a competition and judged some of the beers, I get goosebumps. Actually, a homebrewer came in here the other day and gave me goosebumps with the beer he gave me. It was amazing. It was one of the best IPAs. It blew my mind, right? we're actually launching a beer that has nothing more to do with Toolshed than it's a place for homebrewers to come and brew a beer and get it into the market. So we're just gonna pick a homebrewer and say, next batch is yours. And if you've got an amazing beer, we'll teach you how to scale it up to the big system. You'll work with our graphic designer, get a label for the cans. You'll be in national and craft. You'll be able to tell your family, come to Co-op and buy a 6-pack of my beer. And so because we've been able to enjoy that experience of sitting at a place like National and hearing somebody over my shoulder order my beer, you know, I'm like, he doesn't know I'm just some retarded homebrewer, right? And I'm losing my mind right now that this guy just ordered my beer. It's the best moment of my life. We're gonna give that to other homebrewers.